Dear students, good morning. Let's start the discussion on today's newspaper, 17th January 2018. The first article, Government to Revisit Malema Report. You know the Malema Report is about reforms in criminal justice system. Understand the problems are major problem in our criminal justice delivery. One is, we make very harsh laws, but we fail to implement them. And the second is, the low conviction rate proves poor quality of investigation in India. Now, any committee in its recommendations is supposed to balance the record of human rights violations in India by police and also how to raise the conviction rate so that there can be a deterrence from the crime. This is what is the objective. In this line, Malema committee gave one sweeping recommendation. That is, anything which is made or any confession made before police can be admissible as an evidence in court of law. Remember, a self-incriminating evidence is not possible in the existing criminal justice system, and it is also a violation of the Constitution, Article 20. So why this particular provision is kept in the Constitution? Let us understand that. In the 16th century in England, you had these special chambers. In this, every accused is supposed to take an oath. If this person under oath is not revealing what he knows, he can be put to torture so that they can get the evidence from him. So when self-incriminating evidence was allowed in medieval times, that has led to huge human suffering in the hands of the authorities. Today we believe that such a human rights violation has no place in modern democracies. And second is, if you take the police brutalities in India into consideration, if such a provision is allowed, an arbitrary confessions can be taken by the police under the pressure of punishment. And when the police are using the force and you are allowing for self or confession statements as evidence, then it can lead to further and further violence and human rights violation. And third most important is, a self-incriminating evidence, prohibition of this is a kind of human privacy in criminal justice system. Remember this statement carefully. It is a kind of human privacy with regard to criminal justice system. It is based on three basic principles. What are the basic principles of criminal justice system? One is, every accused is an innocent unless proven. And second aspect is, any person or it is up to the prosecution to prove the guilt of that particular accused. And the third aspect is, every accused has a right to remain silent. He need not produce any evidence that goes against him. So these three are the cardinal principles of the criminal justice system. And Justice Malema committee wants to change the third cardinal principle to increase the conviction rate. It may provide arbitrary powers to the police. That is our take-home point. And not just this, even the second ARC also has recommended for increased detention of the people under various special laws such as the terrorist acts. All these, in a way, if we see from the perspective of human rights, these are derogatory. And second recommendation which it gave with regard to the judicial reforms, what that the impeachment of a judge, that is removal of a judge, is a very difficult process. That's why National Judicial Commission need to be appointed. And in India there is another problem. False cases are being levied against the political opponents. Any of these false cases have to be dealt stringently. That is the Malema committee recommendation. The most important recommendation is a confession before the police shall be admissible as an evidence. Why it shall not be? The other perspective of it, we saw it over here. The next aspect, CJI meets judges, initiates dialogue. You know that when four judges, senior most judges of the Supreme Court, have confronted CJI, the entire judicial system in India has come to a standstill and crisis. So in this context, a positive move from the Chief Justice of India as captain of the ship is to initiate dialogue with these dissenting judges. That is what is the positive move. 3 spectators go to death in Tamil Nadu. It is about Jallikattu. Jallikattu is a festive sport, a tradition in Tamil Nadu. In this bull taming sport, the argument is between animal rights and also tradition. So, as a tradition, it has to be protected under the cultural and minority rights in our constitution. And the animal rights are basically biological rights. Every living being has a right to have food, right to drink water, and right to life. So, the animal rights are also recognized in India, and there is a law to protect these particular animals from cruelty. And on the other hand, if you take it as a tradition, bull taming sport as tradition, no tradition will be automatically accepted as constitutional unless there is a historical evidence to that. But for Jallikattu, there is a sufficient historical evidence over here. On the other side, it is also stated as necessary for protection of biodiversity. Why? The traditional bulls are being protected and tamed under this sport. If they have to be protected, the sport has to be alive. That is another argument. Though initially Supreme Court banned it, later center's notification of removing the bulls as performance animals or removing the bulls from the list of performing animals has provided for this Jallikattu again. But the problem here is this. That the huge human life is also taken a toll. How to stop this? The major problem is enforcement of the safety measures. The scale of this show is so big. District authorities are unable to cope up with this. That's how we can put it as. Let's go to the editorial page. Following the grain trail. So it is about public distribution system. If you remember, after independence, we do not have any of the famines. What might be the reason? We have a strong distribution network in the form of fair price shops created by PDS system. And second is, starvation deaths also have decreased because the state has taken the responsibility of providing the food to the poor and marginalized. If you remember, the Constitution of India has not just limited the powers of the state, it also empowered the state to protect the weak and marginalized. One of this is right to food, providing for right to food. And it has enacted the National Food Security Act for this particular purpose. But this National Food Security Act is getting diluted for many reasons. One of this is weakening of the PDS system. Today we can see growing technological role and also centralization with regard to the functioning of PDS. The major argument for this from the state is to reduce the leakages. So Aadhaar based authentication is meant to identify the beneficiaries and for targeted delivery. So the first very argument is this. Does PDS need to be universal or targeted? So universal PDS has yielded better results to fight the malnutrition rather than the targeted PDS. But however, we moved from universal to targeted PDS now. In this targeted PDS, benefits have to be delivered only to the eligible. So Aadhaar is made as an instrument for this. But most of the times, Aadhaar authentication is becoming difficult as their biometric data is not safe, or the biometric data due to manual labor or age is getting erased. And second aspect is many of the times these machines are non-functional, and the people who are unable to get this Aadhaar number, their ration cards are automatically eliminated. And in a family, if there are 5 members, most of the times in the ration card, 2 or 3 members' names are reflected. In those circumstances, the remaining people are not being offered the food subsidy. Simple thing. Aadhaar based authentication has many technical and operational issues which the government is ignoring. In these circumstances, many exclusion errors are coming down. And second aspect to this is cash transfers or direct benefit transfer. There are 2 types of this direct benefit transfer. First, you buy, I'll give you money to your bank account is one style. Second style is, I'll give you money in the bank account, withdraw them and go and buy that particular subsidy. This is what is the second form. So the second form is used over here. The government wants to give the money in the bank account, which has to be withdrawn, and it has to be bought in the PDS shop at the market prices. So here, most of the people, they may not have access to bank accounts, and banks are not close to the people, they are at distant locations, and it's a huge expenditure to access banking sector. So once you access the banking sector, next we have to go to the PDS system. What the government is thinking is probably to eliminate this PDS system permanently in the long run, because for 30 or 40 rupees which the government is providing subsidy, they can buy the grain in the open market. What is the necessity to have the PDS? So it appears to be a first step towards killing the PDS system. But it also has created operational challenges to the people. That's how we can put this as. So the finally, centralization, technological role is reducing the access to subsidy benefits, especially related to the food for poor and marginalized in the country. That's what is the essence. Face the inevitable. Let's understand this article. Here you need to have a small concept of bond yields and bond prices. Let's take, I bought a bond price is around 100 rupees and the yield is around 7%. Let's talk it this way. Today, the yield has happened to be 8%. So the bond price, the core value of the bond, how it will react to it. So as the bond yield decreases, as the bond yield increases, the core price of the bond is bound to decrease. Let me say this way. There is a bond A which has a yield of 7%. It means 1000 rupees it is brought. So it is going to give me 7 rupees. So next, a bond B, it has brought, or yield is around 8%. Bank has released bond B. So obviously 8 rupees is going to be the yield of this particular bond. So I will be willing to buy this rather than this. Then what this bond A will do, it will reduce it to 900 rupees. It means on 900 rupees you are getting the 7% yield. As 1000 is reduced to 900, 100 rupees is the bond value erosion. So as this particular bond yield is raised to 8%, as proportionate to that, the bond value has decreased. The principal has eroded. So that is what is happening. Today the bond yields are rising and principal value is getting eroded. This is what we call it as capital erosion. Most of the banks in India are suffering from this capital erosion. The reason is, during demonetization, the credit growth was very low. Even after that, it was very low. Most of the banks have invested the money in bonds. As the bond's principal value is getting eroded, it is ultimately leading to loss of capital for the banks. It is to the tune of 15,000 crore rupees. Now, it is a market risk, and RBI has clearly stated that it has no willingness to involve with the market risk. Al Gore, this is about the existing Jallikattu, and we have already discussed the issue with regard to Jallikattu. And the next aspect, the people connection. Israel and India, people to people connection is growing. There is a large expat community of Indians in Israel. So Israel is a home for all Jews across the world. So Israel invites all the Jews who are stationed across the world under this Aliyah, the program called as. So Aliyah. So Indian Jews, especially from Western India, they went to Israel and settled over there. But they are not a dominant voice as of now. But however, India-Israel people-to-people connect is going to add value to the diplomatic strength in the future. That's how the author puts it as. And then, let's go to the Malema Committee reports. Government to revisit 2003 Malema Committee report. And, right, there is another important recommendation over here. So the standard that proof or prove beyond doubt. in criminal justice is supposed to be done away with. That is another important recommendation. As of now, if an accused has to be punished, prosecution has to prove beyond reasonable doubt to get him a punishment. That also need to be done away with. Obviously, it is going to give more powers to the state rather than to the citizens if these are being implemented. So normally it is criticized that the Malema committee is more favored towards the police or more favored to the prosecution, and its solo objective appeared to be increasing in conviction rate. That's how it was criticized then when it was released. And then only the strong survive. So Benjamin Netanyahu probably is a strong believer of principle of nature. So the strong and weak, it is the strong which evolves and will have a place in the future. So this is what is the Darwin's theory talks about. So the strong will have a place into the future. So he is based on this, he is pushing for his hard diplomacy. That's what we can think about as. Next page, I gave you the notes. Please go through that, which will be available to you at lax.in/civilsprep.